Verde Broadcasting. Welcome back to Lockdown. I can't think of an illiterate title because, as you know, we don't plan anything and I am useless. But this is another very special episode of Lockdown It Ain't Broke, or whatever you want to call it. We have another very, very exciting guest who I am very excited to have on the channel, and we're very, very privileged to have with us today. Director, philanthropist, have to put that in everything, and hat enthusiast, Marc Price.
The hat is to hide the terrible hair, but it's a Jaws themed one.
It is. I'm very much admiring that. What does it say? Quince shark fishing.
Quince shark fishing. Yeah. I was accosted on the tube once by someone that went, "You go shark fishing." I went, "It's from a film." I had nothing witty to say back. I went, "It's from a film."
You know what you should have said? You should have said, "Y'all know me. Know how I make a living."
That would be great.
Yeah.
But it's like, and then he was trying to sell a Bible to me. I was like, "You should read less of that and watch more of this."
Yeah.
But,
Absolutely.
There you go. No, there you go. I just offended all of your religious viewers straight off the bat.
All three of them.
I'm hoping Richard cuts a date rape joke out of the last one. So it was funny, but it was wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not funny. It was terrible. I'm a monster. I've also had a gin, so who knows where this is going to go.
So if you guys, if it wasn't obvious already, today we're going to have a fairly loose discussion on Jaws, the 1975, 75 epic. Obviously, Steven Spielberg. I mean, there's people you'll already know an awful lot about it, I'm sure, but we're going to kind of throw our two penneth in. Marc, if that wasn't an intro enough, is a great friend and a collaborator, and someone who I have worked with on a film called A Fistful of Lead, which is out there now. Go buy it on video on demand. And is that it? I'm not sure where.
Yeah, it's a video on demand, Amazon Prime, and I think it's on iTunes as well. But I've also seen it pop up on YouTube where you can just illegally watch it. I'm not saying do that, but it's a free world we live in. Aside from the fact that we can't leave our homes right now and shop for certain items, so it's free-ish.
Yeah, right. So
that. I lack all the wit. This is gonna be you're gonna do the heavy lifting and anything. Dunk.
Don't worry about it. So, should we crack on? Let's talk about Jaws then. So, Jaws, how about we start with how you kind of, because I know this is like a very influential film for you, and a very important film for you, and obviously as a filmmaker yourself, that has huge implications. So, what was your first experience with Jaws? How did you first sort of see it?
I think I remember watching it on TV, and my mum had this thing where she was always very like, "Oh, the kids are scared. It's got to be turned off." So it was never me. I was very good at hiding that stuff. But my brother was like, you just wail. I remember Gremlins once. He cried when the one came out of the cupboard. And I was like, "Paul, for fuck's sake, you're 20. What was wrong?" This is, I don't know, he was like 7 or 6 or something. And my mum was like, "Nope, got to go to bed." And I was like, "Look, Mum, I don't know why I was this articulate at 8, because I'm definitely not articulate in any way, shape or form as an adult." And I said, "Look, if he goes to bed now, he'll not know how this situation is taken care of. He's going to think they're still out there. I still think they're still out there. We've got to get to the end of this." So but that one didn't work. But I think Jaws came before that. And for some reason, my brother was okay with Jaws. I don't remember any incidents, but I was terrified. And I had to just like keep that to myself, because I think the thing that shocked me the most is a kid died in it. I was like, "Hang on, aren't we immune? We don't get killed in things like this. We get killed if we go into, to get a frisbee from a power station or something like that. That's where we get killed. We fall into sand pits and industrial shit, like all those terrifying adverts, right? That's so don't put yourself in those situations. You're okay, but like, no, a shark eating you. So but it terrified me, and so I sort of like just had to sort of bite my tongue. And I remember watching it when it was on. My parents would watch it, and then I think the time I really got to understand Jaws fully was a friend of mine had it, and I was playing with him over the summer, and he put it on, and I was like, "I've got to get over this, because this is like such a great movie. I've got to get past this." So I would watch it, and then every time someone got killed, I'd look away. And then as the summer went on, we'd play it again the next day. I'd look at that one. Oh, God. And then I'd go through it and I'd desensitize myself to the deaths. So by the end of the summer, we weren't even watching it anymore. We'd look up to see the kills and go, yeah, look at that leg, and then we'd carry on. So. And from that point on, then I think that was my first evolution. And the thing I love most about Jaws is it's a film that's grown with me, because the film remained the same, unchanged, no special editions or anything like that. It's the same film, and I've grown up around it. So there was the next phase was where you discover how deliberately funny the film is and how witty the film is, and then as the filmmaker side starts to appreciate the fact that it was workshopped heavily because they had nothing else to do, and all of those things sort of become. I think that's why it's sort of important, not just because it's a wicked movie, but how I find that stuff handy to rip off and put in my own little shitty movies.
Yeah, I know, and you raise a really good point there, because I think we're part of a generation that sort of right on, we're hanging off the edge of millennial kind of just about, but that I think partly, and this sounds very navel gazing, and I don't mean it to, but part of kind of we've seen that transition through to sort of technology and connected technology, and in terms of the film industry, what that's meant is there's been the evolution of sort of retrospective stuff and looking back, and lots more documentaries and information available to us that just wasn't when we were younger, that just wasn't there. So you saw the film and that was it. And so, what's been nice is that that's happened at a pace with our kind of maturity, so that we've kind of been able to appreciate films on so many different levels as we go. No, it's really important, I think.
I mean, I was speaking to has Tim Partridge been on this channel with you guys yet?
No, he hasn't. I spoke to him the other day.
So. We were chatting the other day about so Tim. I guess I should, for some context, Tim's a friend of ours. I think he's done some work with Ollie, and so the thing with Tim that I kind of like is we always talk like films, and he loves the old school method. We were talking about how films were released in the 90s, and we were talking specifically about Memphis Belle and how I didn't catch it in the cinema, but I rented it, and I loved it so much I couldn't wait to buy it. But there was that period where a film would be rental for a while, and you just had to wait another few months before you could then buy it. So they had all these different phases. So it'd come out in the US and Canada first, and we'd only see glimpses of it. And there's this whole and now it's the Invisible Man cinemas are closed. Great, you can rent it for $15.99. There we go. And that's that's where I know that's as a result of the situation we're in right now. But the distribution of films is so vast, and that's sort of had an effect on how films are released. They don't feel as special anymore, if that makes any sense. The specialness of a film comes from the build. So things like Avengers Endgame or Infinity War, there was about 9 or 10 years of investment ramping up to that moment, and it was worth it for me. I thoroughly enjoyed that, but it was one of those things where a film doesn't often come out and make that splash, and it's an original film, and this is what you get. Boom, there we go. These are the characters. Oh, do we make more of these now? People seem to like that one. That's not. I don't. Does that happen? It doesn't feel like that happens in the way it used to, at least with me.
I think firstly, obviously, it's the money making model has shifted away from just the film. So it's obviously the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the main example of this, or the biggest example of this, or the most extreme example of this. But it's about everything else that goes around it, and it's kind of like where the music industry was 10, 12 years ago. When I used to play in a band and everything, it was, it was MySpace and all that kind of thing, but it was even then we were like, look, we just have to give our music away for free. All our studio recordings, everything has to be given away for free. People even back then weren't expecting to pay for your music, especially as a no one band. But it was like the only monopoly you have is your live performance. Well, films don't even really have that. I mean, you could consider the cinema release to be that. And it's interesting to see how things are going now. Because that is now closed to everyone. I think big juggernauts like James Bond, obviously, that's now been postponed potentially indefinitely, hopefully just till November. But that's the thing, that too much hangs on the box office. So in a way, I've kind of, at the end of the market that I work in, I won't speak for you, but at the end of the market that I work in, it's frustrating that everything hangs on a kind of release opening weekend box office result. I understand that model, but it feels like if we could just break it and find a way to make that work, then we wouldn't have this sort of stranglehold anymore.
Yeah, we're in the same boat with our teeny films, because the distributors want them at a certain date. We've got to get them out a certain date, and sort of I guess where that sort of comes back to Jaws was that I think the film was originally meant to be released in around about Christmas, I think originally, but it was so delayed because of those shoots, because of the shoot and the shark not working, and I think it was mainly the last act that was the issue of Jaws, and so they ended up releasing it in the summer, and I don't know if films were released in the summer strategically in the 70s. I don't think they were. I think it was more Christmas, and then there was the awards season, and that was where you'd get the big films. But then, like, there's this summer release thing. I think Jaws was the first one really that really landed in with that much impact. And the best thing,
it's arguably responsible for what we were talking about. It's the original blockbuster, isn't it?
Yeah. And the thing I love about Jaws is that it starts off feeling kind of like, this is man versus nature, and it's it's sort of like a monstrous shark, sort of like picking away at people, behaving kind of like a shark that's in an area and just doing its thing. But by the end of the film, there's like a specific point where it switches. It's not a shark anymore; it's a monster. And I think it's the bit where it drags the boat backwards, and they're like, "What the hell was that?" and then Richard Drake's like, "Oh, it's chasing us now." From that point on, it's not a shark anymore; it's a monster, so it can do whatever it wants. And it jumps on the boat, it rips open the cage, it attacks with a deliberate purpose instead of just, "Oh, look, that's an easy target. It's a kid who's swimming by himself. He's not with that group of other kids. He's separate from them." And that's kind of shark attack patterns. Is if there's a group of people, it'll go for the one on the outside. And so because I'm to a degree a failed oceanographer. Failed probably because all my shark facts are really horribly out of date. But it's I'll throw all my shitty shark theories in the pot. See how my pseudoscience, my terrible pseudoscience ties in with real life shark shit.
You can give some Trumpian level shark advice.
Oh, what a great idea he had today about injecting yourself with bleach. Let's give that a pop. What could go wrong?
That's where Quint went wrong. Yeah.
That's how you kill the shark. You
myself with bleach now, Chiefy. That's why it's pissed all the time. Hey, no, it's a wonder the shark wasn't drunk after it ate Quint. But there we go. That's another story.
It was chewing that barrel like a kebab.
That's why he didn't spit it out. I think you're absolutely right, though. It's interesting because now you kind of the way the film is structured is so great in that it's the lead up to all that stuff, and you're right to sort of pick that moment out. I think is that for even though we've seen the shark kill people, for the protagonists, it's been theoretical. Like you've got obviously Hooper, who is the theorist, even though he's had practical experience. But in the film timeline, it's all theoretical. Everything's like, what is it? We're with Brody obviously working out what it is, but it's still all on paper. And then that's partly a function of obviously the history of the principal photography, with the shark not working and him having to come up with inventive places to put the camera. And that's all well documented, and I'm sure most people watching this will be aware of that. But it's what that does for the film is it still puts us even more in Brody's shoes, because everything is theoretical. Everything, you're just seeing the aftermath of stuff generally until that moment, until the shark, as you say, starts having agency and starts going on the offensive towards them. It's there's some cracking stuff in it. I'm trying to think of a methodical way to go through this. I suppose
we could start with the fact that no matter how much you try to adjust the brightness, that underwater shot of Christy, you cannot see her minge. That is an absolute fact. I've tried on every format. I mean, I'm not that I could say I'm not that interested, but I've clearly got some curiosity. But I was like, nope, ain't there. Can't see shit. So it's at the beginning.
It's a bit of both, but totally. Yeah, yes. I mean, it is much in the vein of. I mean, Spielberg often talks about wanting to make a Bond film, and that kind of has. It's almost his sort of pre-title title sequence, isn't it?
Exactly.
Naked girls swimming around, kids. No guns, but no, it's that. I mean, because for me, it was a film I knew about before I saw, so I guess I came to it from. I remember seeing this. I think I saw Jaws: The Revenge first. Oh no! I saw Jaws 2 first. I remember seeing that with my dad on TV when I was very young and being kind of scared, but it wasn't for me. Jaws. So you see, I put Jaws. Spielberg, is very good at telling the kind of childlike story, and I know Jaws isn't necessarily from the perspective of a child, but it's for whatever reason, and I know
it's the family thing.
Absolutely.
The family thing is what, and that's the big part of Jaws is his family uprooted from what he perceived as a dangerous place to go to this safe place, which turns out to be dangerous. And there's that lovely little line when he says to his wife, because he's like, I'm ostracized here, no one listens to me, I know people keep dying, so people are dead because of me. and then when he says to his wife, okay, take the kids home, it'll be fine, and she goes, home New York. He's like, no, home here. Like, this is our home now. It's a fucking lovely, lovely moment. And you're like, right, now he's fighting for his home. And where Jaws is dated a little bit is that you don't. Have you got a honker outside?
Yeah, one of my neighbours likes to go and sit in his car and fucking talk on Facebook Live. Sorry, I don't know why he does that. He goes, sits outside, starts his engine, just sits in his car. Does he not understand that I'm recording valuable content? Well, exactly, and I think for me the film therefore kind of exists in the same pantheon for the same reason that things like The Goonies, Stephen King's It, all those kind of things, and I think Jaws 2, though not directed or though Spielberg had nothing to do with it, it still fits into that category of like kids on an adventure, and I think Jaws sort of has that as well. I think for me it was never like scary. I mean, don't get me wrong, like when I'm swimming in the sea and I'm out of my depth, it does come into my head that there was under the thing, and I've been chased out of the sea by a barracuda before.
Oh, no way.
Not fun.
Was it shaking a fin at you? Get out of my water!
Get out of my water!
I don't know what it sounds like. Popeye.
Yeah.
Like winky eye and a pipe, a corncob pipe. Very weird.
You're not a real threat, you son of a bitch. Because I'm gonna go fuck.
Yeah. Kiss my ass. Oh shit. I made the cardinal sin. I was in the Bahamas and I went swimming, and a friend of ours lost his wedding ring finger because he wore his wedding ring, and they see glinty stuff and they think it's fish scales. And because of the way they work, this is obviously nothing to do with Jaws, but the way they work is they sit far away from things, and when they see things glint, they assume it's a shoal of fish or whatever, and they just attack. And they're like a torpedo. They come from miles away and they just eat whatever it is and go. And so if I was wearing a watch at the time, and that was a mistake. So luckily I wasn't attacked by it or anything, but I saw it. I just got out of my depth as well, and that was so I was like, that's the thing, you have to turn your back on it and go, and that was horrible. But anyway,
well, your Barracuda story makes me go, huh? What? If it said shark.
Yeah.
See what I did there? It was like a shitty Jaws reference.
No,
it was pathetic. This is
I've been swimming with sharks. I went swimming with sharks in the Bahamas as well, but they weren't. I mean, they were like nurse sharks and stuff, so not particularly aggressive. But cool, really cool. I like doing that.
Yeah, that's the thing is that I think the thing with going into the ocean, there's like, we weren't always at the top of the food chain, and there's something in us that acknowledges that. And I guess some people are used to going in the water in the same way as people are used to heights. You acclimatize to it, and then that sort of initial sort of, ooh, this isn't safe, goes away. And I don't swim in the sea often enough for that to go away. So I have it when I go in the water. And, I remember I was in the water with another friend of mine. He doesn't swim in the ocean very often. And we were kind of just about out of our depth. So this is in Cannes. And I said, and a wave was coming, the waves would come towards you. They'd cut the horizon out. So what you've got is no more horizon, but you've got this wave that feels like it's traveling towards you. And so I sort of said, anything could be in that. And he went, ah! And I was like, ha 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 ha. Sort of let him. I was like, I got to get ahead of him, otherwise he's going to get me first. Just throw my friend under.
Yeah, it often tops the sort of charts of top horror films and stuff like that. I've never really found it to be that. It has that adventure spirit, which is why I sort of tie it to all the other kind of the things like. I mean, Stranger Things is in this vein as well, but it's that kind of it's the adversity that I think is more at the heart than the monster or the evil or the whatever the horror aspect of it. The horror aspect of it isn't it's not I don't think of it as a horror film, much in the same way as I don't think like Silence of the Lambs. I know Toby, who's been on the channel, says it is. I can understand why you would say it is, and I have no problem with someone saying that it is. But for me, it's more of an adventure film. It's about Jaws is talked about as the film about a shark that's not about a shark. I mean, it kind of, I for me, the takeaway was always the adventure.
Yeah, I have to remind myself that it's a scary film. At the time, when I was a kid, it was terrifying. As I remember, I don't have that feeling anymore. My heart is pounding watching something. I don't get it anymore, and it's like where something is genuinely frightening me, and it's like, oh wow, I can't remember. I think a film did it. A film did it recently, and in recently I mean like in the last 7 years, but not many. And it's a lost thing. It's one of those things that I remember feeling so vividly with Jaws, but I don't get. So it was always terrifying to me. Then that went away, and then I saw the layers of the movie, and I think that's why there's so much in it for me. Just like so many teeny tiny little things. Like there's a lovely scene where they're all walking just after the Alex Kitten has been eaten, and as they're walking, we're walking down this corridor, and if you just keep an eye on Brody, like awkwardly bumps into a sign. Like the guy just doesn't fit at all, and every single opportunity is taken for him to play that somehow, whether he's pulling paintbrushes out and then he drops a bunch of paintbrushes all over the counter, or whether he's bumping into like a sign, or or he's trying to say, everybody get out of the water. Yeah, everyone runs in, even though it's to get their kids. There's just a lack of, he's the odd man out constantly, even when they're comparing scars and he's looking at his, he's like, oh, my appendix wound, shit, I can't really contribute to this cool story. That's where he is. He's that odd man out, and I think that's the sort of relatability. I remember, I think it's in the Jaws log, where they talk about Dreyfus just being, Roy Scheider being so like restrained and not allowed to play the sort of aggressive character that he normally plays. He just went kind of crazy, had a breakdown. I believe he instigated this food fight one night. It was one night where they all just had a fucking mental food fight. All the stress had got to them, so they just started flinging food at each other. And I think it was Roy Scheider who instigated it. I think he threw something at Spielberg, like some mashed potatoes to Spielberg, and Spielberg threw some back, and it just fucking went nuts. But but it was like he was like it was all to do with like his odd man out restraint, which is something I was unfamiliar with him for him as an actor. But I think he loved playing it, and so much so he hated being a part of Jaws 2, particularly after I think John Hancock was fired. I think it was John Hancock. He was fired, and then Jeannot Schwartz was brought in, and then they had to do this sort of like teen type movie, and he just resented it and was just the most difficult actor on that film apparently, and really didn't want to be a part of it. But I think he really grew to really appreciate what Brody was and what he represented. And I mean, there are things in Jaws that I sort of loved. Stop me if I waffle too much as well, by the way.
That's right.
But I was listening to a podcast recently that was covering the music from Jaws, and they talk about how Brody's theme is in the film. I thought, Brody's theme? I never really thought about that. What is Brody's theme? And he goes through the fact that the end credits, the music at the end credits, that's his theme, and it's layered into the film ever so subtly. And by the time you get to the end, when he's absolutely fine, there's that shot of him swimming up to the shore, coming out of the water. That's his theme. And I was like, oh, that's an amazing little bit of storytelling that John Williams managed to work into the music. Because there's a lot going on in that score. People think it's like dun 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 dun. There is so much more going on in that score than two notes played very well. So my enthusiasm for Jaws is sort of endless, and it's actually one of the weirdest things. I don't know I don't even know what to talk about with it. I may need a guide hand to.
That's. I mean, that speaks to the kind of, I suppose, baptism-like thing for Brody, is the fact that once his theme, that's often done. I mean, James Bond is a recent example of it with Casino Royale and stuff, but it's like you don't get his theme to the end because he's not who we know to the end. And I suppose in a way you could see that with Brody, is it's like his baptism is he's literally coming out of the water and you're getting his theme finally, and this is who he is. And I think that's great. I think that's just a really nice thing for John Williams to have done. It's probably just for him in his head at the time, but it's a really nice thing to find later on. I think you're right. It's another thing you kind of brought up there is that the story of the making of Jaws gave it such a second wind in the 90s when they did that documentary, and became kind of almost just as rich and interesting as the film itself, because that was kind of my gateway. I remember when they released it, I think the BBC, was it BBC or someone in the UK put it out on TV and then did the film,
Yeah,
and that's what I recorded. That was my copy of Jaws for the longest time, and so I would always watch both kind of in tandem, and it is fantastic, and it is really great to kind of, because it was an adventure for them making it, and it was it's an example of something I don't know, and you could probably speak to this more than I can, but at the moment there just doesn't seem to be that adventurous, risk-taking way of making films. Certainly not at that level, anyway. Not with Hollywood.
They sort of hide that, whereas those sort of like fly on the wall DVD documentaries were so insightful. Like was it the Phantom Menace one that sort of shows the sort of warts and all process, because George Lucas is very brave with not minding people see that or have access to that. But now DVD special features are a marketing tool, so everything was fine, everything was great. There's nothing on that Rogue One DVD that covers whatever issues they felt they had with that film. It was all like, oh no, we're having a great time and we're really happy. And it's like, well, anyone, I don't know anything, but there are a lot of people like, oh yeah, it's pretty shit. Like, there's a really good director who was not treated properly. There's that sort of thing that happens, and and then there are the really fun ones like Fantastic Four, where it's like, no, it was all great. It wasn't. Yeah, it was. It was great. It wasn't. Yeah. It was great. Okay then. There's less of the adventure of making a movie you see these days, I guess. And but when that camaraderie is there, when it's like something like, again, to bring up Avengers, and it feels like a really nice team of people to get on, it's kind of fun. And like, I know that like Star Trek isn't your thing, but when you read about the original crew of Star Trek not really getting along, you're like, oh, that's disappointing, because I really loved the idea that these guys were really friends. But in Jaws, you hear about Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw, and you're like, oh, that really adds something to this for some reason. Interesting fact, for me, there's a lot of rumors around things like the woman at the beginning really hurt herself during that take, where she was yanked back and forth, which is not true, but for some reason that was out there as a thing. My favorite one, and this one I haven't come across that often, is that the leg they had that was meant to float to the bottom of the after the guy gets eaten in the boat was the stuntman who's in lots of Spielberg films. He's this. It's a stiff. That's him from the Goonies.
Okay.
So he's he's like a good stunt guy. So he's able to play a convincing dead body and not laugh despite Chunk being hilarious. And all the kids leap over him in the bike in E.T. In E.T. So Ted Grossman's the guy's name. So he does this. His leg floats to the bottom of the water. There's rumor kicking about that Spielberg's like, that's not a good leg. You need to get a better leg than that. And Joe Alves went into a bar and said, hey, look, I don't need anyone hurt, but I need a leg tomorrow. And I went, okay, no one will get hurt. Here's the money. And then they gave him a leg. He went, was anyone hurt? No one's hurt. This feels real. Yeah, definitely get rid of it afterwards. Okay. And and then there was a news story of a morgue that had been broken into and the body's mutilated. And that this leg was hacked off and used in the scene, which I also believe is not true. So sorry for the long story. This is also bullshit. But if I was ever to make a movie about making a movie, I would have to try to find a way to take that story and put it in the movie, because there's something about that. Like, I need a leg tomorrow. I don't want anyone hurt, but I ain't asking questions. Get me a fucking leg. And the implication is break into that morgue over there. Get me a leg.
Do you think? Do you think you could? There's legs in making a film about the making of Jaws, not a documentary, obviously, but an actual.
I wanted to. I think there was a while I was pitching stuff for television, and they said think big, and I said, okay, here's one. And I know it won't happen because Spielberg doesn't really sign off on any use of Jaws stuff. I know that Kevin Smith was trying to get Quint eaten in Jaws for Jersey Girl. And, he was, you see Quint get eaten in the 7-year-olds watching it horrified, and George Carlin goes, and that's why she never goes swimming. And Spielberg said, no, I don't want you to use that. So Kevin Smith picked another moment, same thing, and same thing happened. Spielberg's like, look, I just don't want a weird way. So that was one of the things that kind of. So I don't think Spielberg really signs off on it. So when I came up with this idea of the behind-the-scenes making of Jaws, it just didn't seem to be a thing that I think could ever possibly. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of those things. I mean, I guess what'll have to happen is, well, I don't know. I don't know if Spielberg has the rights. They'd have to revert at some point after his death, I guess, before anyone could actually do anything with them.
I think so. It's interesting, isn't it, that Spielberg films are not remade. I don't think there's a remake of a single Spielberg film, is there? There's sequels, but not remakes.
Yeah.
So other people have done Jurassic, but no one's, and I know with Indiana Jones, that was the first time someone's going to do a sequel to Indiana Jones with that he's not directing, but and there's no remake of any of them. I think he has some power to say, no, mine's the definitive version, no one remakes it. So I think if I had to do that with a movie, yeah, it's totally. And I think if I had to do that with a movie idea, I'd probably do it with, I'd just make up my own film and then take some of those things and put them in as like fun references, which I think is the way around that issue.
Yeah, no, I reckon so. Yeah. It's such a time capsule, Jaws, because I was thinking this the other day. Someone had put on YouTube, they'd redone, what these people tend to do, they'd redone the effects for Jaws. They did for Jaws the Revenge, and they cut the shark out. Everyone. You seen it?
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I was really impressed with it. It was. The thing is, it's quite strange. It's less interesting when it's a real shark.
That's exactly what I was going to say, and that's what I was going to lead me on to my point. Was that when you see, and again, it's true even of the original film. It's like the lesser interesting parts are the live shots of sharks, and it's weird. And I got into this mindset with the whole Jaws series of like, I know that's a fake shark. It looks fake. Like it does look. It looks like this monstrous rubber dick that comes out of the sea. And yet, I completely buy into it as this thing that's chasing them and doing all this stuff. And it's really weird. And it is totally a time capsule. Because I think, whatever mutterings or whatever thing that goes on about remaking Jaws and the Spielberg situation aside, if you wanted to, I don't think you could. Because what would you make it about? You'd have all this realistic shark stuff. And I just think it loses something when you do that.
The Jaws remake would be... fucking hell, this is where I get really... Right, so... Bradley Cooper is Brody, and he's a single dad, right? That's what it would be. He's a single dad. He's there, all that sort of stuff. The mayor would be like fucking pure evil, right? He's not out for the interest of the town. He's just pure fucking evil, right?
Yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence would be Hooper, right? And they'd be like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, this is great. And then fucking someone like Liam Neeson would be Quint. And he would have no layers at all. He would just be a prick. He just wants to kill sharks. But they're on the endangered species list, Jennifer Lawrence would say. It doesn't matter. And they'd end up deliberately throwing him to the fucking shark, or orchestrating some way for the shark to eat him so that they can get away and the shark lives, because you can't kill animals like that anymore. That is quite fucked up. In fact, what was that film with Blake Lively's ass in it?
Reef. No,
which I know sounds like a terrible thing to say, but that is basically how that film was marketed. There's an ass in this movie.
I thought that film was all right, but what is it called? It's not The Reef, is it?
No, The Reef is excellent. The Reef is a really good film. It's called The Shallows.
The Shallows, yes.
I thought that film was bollocks. I liked it. No, I thought it was bollocks, but I kind of liked it. I didn't. It was a frustrating watch, because it was clearly like, that film should have ended with her going, here's my story, and she tells everyone, oh, you killed a great white shark. Okay, cool. Well, okay, we're going to arrest you now. It's a fucking endangered animal. You should have just got out of the fucking water. But I had to do this Wile E. Coyote cartoon fucking Acme fucking swim into the ground shit with it and kill it. No. I know you say that, but it's endangered. You were swimming. There was a dead whale in the vicinity. It was a very silly place for you to be. You should have got out of the water. It was busy eating the whale. Sorry, prison for you. And that's where the movie should have ended. That would have been fucking brilliant. I would have gone, yes. Because you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't make your conservation fucking shark movie and then make your sharks a monster movie. It's like, because they're neither of those things. They're an animal, of course. The conservation part is a thing. But they're not monsters. But no one can resist the monstrous part of it. And it's quite strange. It's like, there's a danger and a tension there. That's why I think The Reef is one of the best shark films. There's Jaws. my personal connection to Jaws 2 means that Jaws 2 has got to go up right after Jaws. Then there's the reef. Then there's a fucking huge drop, and then you've got open water and whatever the fuck else. And that's like, and the reef is so fucking amazing. It's and I was like, I want to watch a bad shark movie. I put it on, and I was so blown away by how genuinely terrifying and convincing it was. Like, I highly recommend it. It's on Netflix at the moment. It's definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it. I highly recommend it. But my God, it's like, yeah, The Shallows. For some reason, I was watching it going, man, The Reef is good. We need to watch. I need to watch The Reef right after this and cleanse my palate.
My feeling with that is I think the pass I give certain filmmakers is when they do at least allude to it being allegorical. You can kind of get away with it. Like, I think The Shallows does that. I think it really makes out that this beach is purgatory, and it's what is she choosing to, she leaves herself behind. She goes into the water. Some of it's lazy and doesn't hold together, but I think generally speaking, there's an allegory there that allows you to see the shark as something other, which is what Jaws does as well. It's classically, again, it's not about the shark. The shark can be a big rubber willy with teeth because it's not really about it being a realistic shark film.
I think my problem with it was, and I don't like kind of crapping on films. I really didn't care for that one, and although I also could watch it, it's fucking so strange. It's such a strange relationship to have with the film, but I think my problem with it was that it was trying to sort of act like, oh no, but it's a real animal, it's not a monster. And I said, after I watched it, I turned to the person I was watching it, I said, I bet you if I went on YouTube to find the director, he's going to be talking about some shit about how this isn't a fucking monster, it's an animal just doing its thing. And no shit, that's the first thing I found. I was like, okay, then why'd you kill it at the end? Because you wanted to make it a monster, and you can't end a monster movie by letting it fuck off. So I think those are the things that bug me most, is the contradictory nature of, like, what are you trying to do here? What kind of movie are you trying to make? And I feel terrible. I shouldn't be pooping on films. I make such
no.
That's why I have a chin.
Yeah.
I forget that this is going out to all of your mates. It's like having conversations, like, oh shit. Speak like you're speaking to, like, thousands of people. This is
it's all good. It's all good.
Every film is great. I don't hate anything.
Well, 47 Meters Down is another one that we have a mutual friend, Ben, who's a producer, who had a hand in that. Again, another thing that I think it conceptually I think works quite well. Don't get me wrong, it falls into the sort of teen slashery genre, but with a different sort of twist on it. So you have to see it in that context.
That one doesn't fuck about their monsters. There we go. It's like that's a very clear. I say that film doesn't fuck about their monsters. They don't. That's it. And it's like, okay, fine. If that's your stance, you can take that stance. There we go. We know where we stand. You're not pretending to be anything else. And it's that's that I'm all right with. I think it's the there's a way of doing that. Jaws does that. It's half of the movie, and then it's a demon by the end of the film, and that I quite like. There's a quality to that that's quite intelligent. No one ever says it. It's never stated. You just see the experts not understand it, and they're like, I don't know what this is. And that is great. It's in the book as well, because I read the book a few times. This is another one I keep going back to.
I've read it. Love it. Yeah, I think it's a great book.
There's a bit where I think it comes out and they talk about how because it's what's it called, spy hopping, when a shark's head is above water. They do that quite a lot.
Yeah.
They see it, they just turn around and it's fucking there, and it's huge, and it's like, oh, and Quint is like, that thing's a devil, it's a demon, that ain't no fish. It's and it's you go, oh, okay, this is interesting. They state it in the book, and I think they just took the spirit of that and put it in the film a little bit, even though it does disregard the book. There's enough in the book that it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting to fuse them together in your brain, isn't it? Because even though there's a separation thing, because there's all the stuff in the book that wasn't embraced in the film is definitely for the better for that film. But it's nice to know that, in another universe, if I had a Rick and Morty gun, I could go to another dimension where they translated that book to the screen, and then we have that movie. And I wonder what that would be like. And
I mean, I think if Jaws had never been made and we were looking at making it now, I think a mini series might be the way to go with it, because the book does have so many layers to it. You could make a sort of 4 or 5 part mini series. I think.
Yeah. 90s William H. Macy would be a great mayor of Amity, wouldn't he?
Yes, yes, he would. Yes, very much. Well, because what's his name in The Incredibles? Bob's boss, who's voiced by what's his name from Cheers?
Oh, Coach. Oh, hang on. In the
I wish I could remember his name. Sorry.
Craig T. Nelson. Craig T. Nelson. Is Craig T.
Craig T.
Nelson?
Nelson. Craig T. Nelson's Mr. Incredible, but the guy who voices his boss. You know, the like, come on, Bob, like Bob, like you know.
Oh, Sean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sean.
He's basically like William H. Macy, kind of, but in a sort of stretched but small proportion.
I had a lot of fun trying to recast Jaws in my teenage years, trying to be like, oh, who would be good to do that part? And there's even a part where it's like, I'd love to see Arnie as Brody. I don't know why. Let's just
You're
go.
going to need a bigger boat. Yeah.
It's just a guppy.
It's I mean, so well, okay. Let's one thing, because again the thing you've sort of brought up, which I thought was really important, was the how it evolves with people. And I think I feel quite lucky in a way that generationally, in one sense, I would have loved to have been around when it came out and experienced it for the first time in the cinema and all that kind of thing. But I also quite like the fact that it was a thing that was talked about and a thing that was whipped up while I was too young to watch it. Then when I sort of went right around the time when I was going to watch it, all the documentaries were happening and it suddenly coming back into the zeitgeist. And so it was this thing that it was on a pedestal, but it wasn't too much on the, it wasn't inaccessible. And so it really hit a sweet spot, I think, with us generationally. And so filmmakers, or people who work in film, or an actor in my case, it I think it had a sort of profound impact in a way that it perhaps hasn't. I'd be interested to know what a sort of teenager who watches it now feels about it.
Funnily enough, an actor friend of ours, Michael Geary, he had he screened it for his birthday.
Wow.
And there are a bunch of people there, and a few of them hadn't seen it, and we all realized that we enjoyed watching them for their reactions. 100%, every single beat, every laugh, every joke, every jump, all of them landed, and it was really amazing to see it. And then speaking to them afterwards, saying like, "Oh, how was the film?" And they were just like, "It was amazing. I can't believe I've never seen this." And it seems to play really strong. I think Brad Watson has a thing about E.T. where he says that a lot of people remember E.T. but no one watches it as an adult. But when he makes them, or if they do of their own free will without Brad's influence, they're always surprised at how great it is, how much it holds up. And I think it's just that's the power of those films, is that Jaws has that sort of that timeless quality where it is quite a sweet film. And of course everything's like the because it's a monster, I'm able to because it's a monster by the end, I'm able to watch it and go, yeah, blow that fucking thing up, and not go, what, like in the same way as I do at the end of The Shallows. I'm like, what, you shouldn't have done that.
Well, yeah. So where the allegory does fall down in this, whereas Jaws is or can be seen as a man conquering his personal demons, because obviously he's afraid of water and all that kind of thing. The Shallows loses it by the, like you say, because the relationship between Blake Lively's character and the shark sort of starts to fall apart at that point, and it becomes simply a thing she has to get past to get to the shore, which is not what is not what happens in Jaws. So no, I agree, and it's a character piece, and often that people, when they get older and hipstery, like to talk about the Indianapolis speech.
Oh god, it's so good,
and it's brilliant, and I agree. But it speaks to the heart of the film, where I think, again, very intelligently, it was character driven. It's not monster driven, and this is the mistake that Jaws 2 doesn't quite make this mistake, but certainly all the rest of them make, which is that it's just like, here comes the shark again, it's like, well, and it's just about getting out of the water, and that's it's not interesting, whereas this is so much more about what it says about the character. I think 2 does a good job of that. I do think Brody is different by the end. Not as much, obviously, because it's the same bloody thing. But
he's proven right, if anything. And it's kind of like, okay, it's sort of more of a instead of like a hero's journey arc, it's more of a god complex. No one believes me, I'm right. And by the end, yes, I'm right. There's not a scene where he gets to go, Oh, there is in a way, isn't there? Before he goes out in the boat, he says, "I told you," but it's not even his moment. I think Ellen Brody gets that moment. She says, "My kids are out there," and tells the boss to fuck off. But yeah, it's Brody doesn't have as much of an arc other than I know I'm right and the world doesn't believe me, which is sort of the whole sort of, that's what people aren't getting out of Zack Snyder's sort of movies, I guess, in a way, isn't it? Is that all the characters are, I'm amazing, no one believes me. And by the end of the film, they learn, oh, Superman was amazing. The Watchmen are amazing. Whatever his story is, it's always that God complex thing. And that was the sort of the thing with Jaws 2. But at the same time, I think Jaws 2 gives a lot of time to the kids, and not all of them are really fleshed out or given much time, but the small amount of time they have is quite fun. I mean, there's a little. I read a book recently on the making of Jaws 2, and it wasn't a very good book at all, but there's some really interesting things in it. Like, I didn't realize that the rating was dependent on how many people died. And do you know that guy that hangs out with Larry Vaughn with the flat cap?
Yeah.
He dies. He's meant to get eaten in the swim to Cable Junction. So in the wide shot, he's not in it. But in a pickup, they show him hugging a rock, going, "Thank you, thank you."
Yes.
But he's not in the wide shot because they killed him. And they're like,
okay.
and they went, "Oh, you're not going to get a PG if that many people die." He's like, "Oh shit, okay, fine." It's just so they added a pickup of him living and took out the scene where he gets killed. So
that's one thing I have to say about Jaws 2 actually, and it speaks more to it's the kids' adventure thing. But it's like the thing is to get to the safe place. I mean, it's very much like when you're a kid and you're not allowed to touch the living room floor because it's lava, right? It's that same thing. Kids can't fall in water. Kids have to get to a safe place. And it's like, that's not so much about the shark. The shark is just the thing that'll, if they fall in the water, they get. And there's some horrific stuff, like when, what's her name? Is it Kirsty? No, not Kirsty. The girl who falls in and saves Michael, but then gets eaten. There's that horrific shot. Yeah, there's that shot of it coming up under the water. That's one thing that this does right. And your stuntman whose leg gets bit off, that shot in the first film. That's probably my favorite shot of the shark, is where it just comes up. It's just under the surface and it grabs him and pulls him.
There too, yeah. The surface one where he's crawling, you just see the shape of it, the shadow, and then it just closes his mouth, and then he falls under. It's like a lovely bit of timing.
Yeah.
And then you get a good glimpse of it, and I think they have the deal where the eyes are white, because great white sharks have a thing. Basically, they thought that because Quint's all like, those eyes roll over white and they rip you to pieces. White sharks do that; they roll their eyes back. And the reason they do it is that most other sharks have something like it's called like a nictitating membrane, which is like a fingernail that covers their eyes. So tiger sharks have that. So they're quite relentless in their attacking. Great white sharks don't have that. They just essentially close their eyes because they need their eyes to hunt. So what they have this sort of this, I think it's like a bite and spit attack pattern where they come in, they're big animals, they shake their food around, and then they let it go. And I think a lot of people misconceive that as great white sharks don't like the taste of people. No, it's their attack pattern to kind of protect their eyes, because seals have claws, man, and so they'll swim around, and within a few minutes, whatever it is will die. But humans normally swim with other humans, so there's other humans to get it out of the water. So that happens, so the shark doesn't eat. It's like, oh, it spat him out. It didn't. It's just, that's what it does. I was waiting for it to bleed to death, and then it'll come in and feed. Because they're opportunist predators. They'll go for the weakest thing, and we don't come off as the greatest things in the ocean. We're like, oh, that thing's easy prey, so they'll just get us. And so it's all. And so there's a theory that's partly to do with protecting its eye. Now, this was a theory when I was reading about shark shit. That might have changed, but that was the last thing I read, and I don't remember how long ago it was. But it, that adds up when you think about it. That makes sense. And
absolutely.
So there's lots of cool, interesting things like that in it. And Jaws never did that. Jaws was so big that he just ate everyone. So everyone says, like, there was no getting away. There's no Kintner remains getting pulled out. That he ate that shit. Swallowed you whole.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, it's. I mean, and again, it's like I say. I just think this is about. It works on so many wonderful levels, because again, it's like when he's in Quint's shack. And you've got all those shots of Brody looking completely out of his depth.
Yeah.
And you've got these two shark experts, one pure anecdote, pure experience, and the other guy supposedly theoretical, but actually he's theoretical and he is experienced. Like Hooper has experience.
Yeah.
City
hands. You got city hands.
I don't need any of this working class hero.
Working class hero crap.
That was in Jaws, okay. the, you know, and and there's all those wonderful cuts back to Hooper, to Brody, just watching the two of them, and it really is. It's a film about, it's allegory. It's about a man overcoming fear. You know, they talk about him being afraid of the water. They talk about his fear of all that. You know, he's looking at books of sharks, and and obviously there's a great moment with Ellen, with she's like,
there's a word for it. What's it called? Drowning.
Yeah. But all that stuff in the shack. It's like, that's the thing. If you've ever been in a situation where you're out of your depth, I know I have. I know I've been in situations where I'm in a room with people going at each other, talking in terms that I cannot understand, and it builds this picture in your head. And again, if I speak about this a lot, and one of the great things I think about doing this channel and just generally talking about film that has opened up for me is this idea of perspective. And really this idea in film of perspective about, like, when people go like, oh, that's not real, or that's not real. It's like, yeah, but whose eyes are you seeing this through?
Spielberg does that better than anyone else. Saving Private Ryan is so good at that. You're always there's that one single shot where they run into is it Rommel? No, it's not Rommel, but it's just the thing where they bump into Paul Giamatti. And it's always just peeking around things, and we're following them. We're at their eye level. He does that all the time, Spielberg, and Jaws is entirely Brody's film. The thing. That shack. There's so much great comic timing in that moment where Brody drinks it, spits it out, says Hooper, "Don't drink that." He drinks it anyway. And he's trying to say his next line and coughing his lungs up. It's so fucking funny, and there's a lot in there. Like, you even get a slight hint that Hooper's trying to prove himself as well.
Yes, yeah.
And he starts talking about, like, okay, I'll talk about football or something, and it's really funny, and there's a lot in there, and Quint doesn't go for it. He's like, I'm not going to be a mate because you like fucking sports. It's like, tie me a fucking knot.
Yeah,
it's great. It's really, really funny stuff, and I think and again, there's lots of the framing is Brody is in the middle of them. He's between them both, and that's a lot of the thing, and I kind of love it on the. When again, humor carries this film so well. When and it's just to establish that, like, the oxygen tank is the thing that's going to kill the shark. You screw around with these things, they're going to blow up. And then Quint just sort of goes up to him and says, "Next time you ask me what not to pull, the right, Chief?" He's like, they're kind of jostling for his affection in a weird way, which is really quite sweet as well.
Again, this is something that I've really picked out of this film, and you may, I don't know, I'd love to know your take on this, but I really, the kind of, I won't call it the moral of the tale, but it's like the victor is the adaptable. The victor is the reason why Brody wins is because he's not set in his ways. He's having to adapt as he goes, 100%. And that's scene. Yeah, and that's that scene. I mean, Quint is hoisted by his own petard. Hooper should have been. Obviously, in the book, he dies as well in the cage, and trying to do his way of killing it.
Verde, Duncan Casey here. That was a great discussion, wasn't it? Really, really good. Thank you so much, Marc Price, for coming on the channel and talking about your favourite film with us. It's a really great big favourite of ours. Unfortunately, it's the nature of technical things. I lost the end of this video. The Skype download for the video corrupted, which meant that it was causing all kinds of errors and problems in my video editing software, both Premiere and I had to use iMovie in the end. So massive apologies to you that you've lost the end of this discussion. Such a shame. And Marc was a really, really great guest, but we will be back with him and we will be doing things again. So and we'll probably cover Jaws again properly, when lockdown ends and all that good stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this. Really, really sorry it got cut short, but thanks so much for watching, and we will see you again very soon. Tatty bye.